Okay, everybody, thank you very much for joining today. Well, thank you and welcome from the UO Alumni Association and the UO Career Center to our event. This is called Alumni Career Stories, Embrace Your Journey. And I will be your MC today. My name is Eric Jelm. I am a UO alumnus, the class of 2011. I'm also actually currently going back to grad school and working on my way to be a double duck. And when I'm not going to school, I now work at the UO Alumni Association after undergoing my own twisting career journey, where I started out college athletics, made my way as far away as Colorado, and now I've returned to the UO. So at the UOAA, I manage our regional chapters as they fundraise to support scholarships, as they plan events. And since COVID hit, I've done quite a bit of planning and hosting of these virtual events. So I'm excited to see where our discussion takes us today. This event was inspired by the themes of our latest Alumni Book Club reading selection. That's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. In that book, there is a library between life and death, where every book provides the chance to try out another life that you could have lived. These books show the main character, Nora, essentially how things would be different if she had made other choices. Would she have done anything differently? Would she undo regrets if she could? So you don't have to have read The Midnight Library to participate in today's discussion, but those themes connect to a lot of the questions that are considered by our alumni, by our current students, both before and after they wrestle with them at their time at the U of O. So today we've put together a program where a panel of our alumni will share their experiences, their winding career journeys, and share their stories with you. We'll then divide up into breakout rooms for some interactive activities and discussion, and then we'll return as a large group to end with a Q&A session for our panel. So just a few logistical tips before we get started. For the best viewing experience, I recommend suggesting speaker view. To turn that on, just click the view icon in your top right-hand side of your screen, and you can click the speaker view. You've also been muted upon entry into this event, so please continue to keep your microphones on mute. It just helps with sound. But if you do have any questions, we want this to be interactive, so feel free to unmute yourself, ask yourself questions of the panel. We are now going to go ahead and introduce you to the panel. We're going to get right into it. I'm going to give a quick intro of our panel, and then they will share much more of their stories. So today we have Sally Bergeson. She is a class of 92. She's the CEO of Boiselle. We are also joined by Cameron Javdani. He's a double duck, and he's had quite a twisting career path. He's now the founder of Sound Secure. We're also joined by Celeste Peterson, who is a dance major and now works as the Director of People Development at Palo Alto Software. Joanna Cesarline is joining us from the UO Career Center. She is the Associate Director of Employer Engagement at the Career Center. So she'll not only share a little bit about her twisting career journey, but also how the Career Center can help out students and alumni. And then last but not least, we're joined by Kevin Yamaka, who is the co-founder and owner of our local SoCo Coffee in Eugene. So with that, I'm going to start out with Cameron. You've experienced a lot of twists and turns in your career path since you left the U of O. What can you tell our attendees about finding opportunity everywhere?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I graduated in 2003 with a degree in political science, and I studied political science because I was, and still am, interested in government and international relations. Fast forward 15 years, and that's translated into opportunities in international business. After graduating back in 2003, I got a job with Aflac, and after a year and a half or 2 years, decided I just Sorry, got back on mute there. Got a job with Aflac after graduating in 2003, and shortly thereafter decided that I wanted something fun and exciting and engaging with a better long-term opportunity for myself. And like your interest, ended up in sports marketing. That was a fantastic industry to be in. Doing promos on the 50-yard line at Autzen Stadium during halftime was an amazing experience. But as all things do, it came to an end, and it came to an end because of no fault of my own. The economy tanked in 2008, and whole divisions of my company, this was with AT&T, got cut in a single day. So fast forward through my career progression, and I've gone from insurance to sports marketing to retail management, and now I've spent about 10 years in the security industry. So if you can find any kind of linear relationship between those industries, please let me know, because I don't know how one leads to another. But true in all of those opportunities is I tried to do the best job I could in each of them. And already I mentioned, hey, a fantastic experience running a promo at Autzen Stadium during halftime. By excelling in certain areas, no matter whether or not it's an industry you're interested in, an opportunity you're interested in, even if it's just a job to get a paycheck to pay the rent, you can find yourself with these opportunities for recognition or advancement or life experiences. For me, my priority is finding those life experiences. And so by making the most of whatever situation, I've been able to advance my career, even though it's taken a very bizarre zigzag pattern. For example, when I worked in retail, I had to commute about 30 miles each way from home to this retail store. Now, I live in Los Angeles, so 30 miles doesn't sound like much if you're going around Eugene, but here that can be about an hour and a half each way. So I had a lot of windshield time, and so I decided to make the most of it. I would start listening to podcasts on how to manage people and how to manage organizations. This was post-MBA too. So I took my foundational education, then took it a step further because I knew if I was listening to drive time radio, I would go insane, and then picked out different behaviors, different managerial techniques, then I could go and apply. Well, when an opportunity did come up for a better long-term career path for me, I was able to speak to some of those managerial practices and was able to create a new opportunity solely based on trying to do the best job I could in a job I didn't like. So when you're faced with these kinds of circumstances of I didn't get my dream job, or my career trajectory in my head has gone a bit askew, you can find these opportunities to better your own skills that will then pay dividends down the road. The other part of that is when you look back at the jobs you've done, you'll find a bit of discomfort with yourself. You'll find, oh, I can't believe I did that, or I said this. And after the initial embarrassment or self-reflection, you'll find that, wow, that was a great thing I did in improving beyond that. Because the fact that you have those butterflies, or the fact that you feel a little bit uncomfortable, means that you've progressed, means that you've grown. So look for those opportunities where you feel those butterflies in your stomach, where you're thinking about jumping off, you're thinking about making a transition or a big choice with some uncertainty, and go for it. And regardless of whether or not it succeeds, you will be better off for having done it. And so as your career path will take twists and turns through no fault of your own. I mean, the stock market crash lost me a dream job of mine. That's okay in hindsight. You've lost jobs, I've lost jobs, and I'm doing okay today. So that's not a problem. So don't stress about the twists and turns. Acknowledge that they're going to happen, but while you're going through them, look for ways to better your own skills, because it will pay dividends down the line.
Thanks, Cameron. That's a really wonderful point about those twists and turns and how you don't necessarily know where you're headed, but looking back, you can see some of the connections that you made. And I think that's a wonderful transition to our next alum, Celeste Peterson, who's now the Director of People Development at Palo Alto here in Eugene. So Celeste, you were a dance major when you were at the University of Oregon, and now you work in human relations, which might not seem like an obvious connection, kind of like what Cameron was talking about. Can you talk a little bit about how your experience, both as a dancer and your time in the dance department at the university, have influenced you and supported you as you've moved along your winding career path?
Sure. Thank you so much, Joanna. Yes. What in the world, how in the world did I go from majoring in dance to becoming the Director of People Development at a software company? If you had told me that when I was in school, I wouldn't have believed it. If you had told me just about anything I ended up doing after school, I might not have believed it. I'm just making sure that my sound is still working because I'm just hearing some beeps. Okay. Um, but there are some common threads. So I've done everything from, I'm also a seamstress and designer. So I did some costume and scenery design and bridal alterations management and nonprofit fundraising, um, and uh, and teaching dance here and there, and trying to keep dancing as possible. But um, then I found an opportunity to enter Palo Alto Software, and at that point I was just I was looking for an environment that was going to support my growth and a healthy way of life as much as possible. So I was looking for a company culture that was great and people who are supportive, and a company that has opportunities for growth. And I found all that there. So the common threads, though, that I use from my dance education have always been creativity. I think no matter what kind of work you're doing, no matter how technical it is, even if you're engineering or a doctor or a fundraiser or an artist, creativity is going to help you immensely, and also the courage to be creative and to improvise and to try new things. Think, have unique thoughts, be willing to try a totally different approach to things than the status quo. And so, I always loved dance improvisation, and those skills have definitely helped me every day. They've helped me when I'm collaborating with others, to like meet people where they are and work with them. And in theater improv, you often hear about the concept of yes and. Whoa, my dog is scratching on the door. um, so that, I try to use that when I'm working with people too. Like, when they bring up an idea, I'm going to meet them where that they are there and try to, accept that idea and add to it, rather than resist it. And that's a great way to work together and come, make each other's ideas better and lift each other up. And that's what my dance colleagues and I always did for each other. And that's what I do with my colleagues now. So also, I think, any kind of performance art requires courage. It's scary to get up in front of people, especially when you're improvising. It's scary to just not have a plan and get up there and put yourself out there. And you have to do that in business, in science, in any industry. You've got to be, willing to fail. I think, at our company, we're constantly trying to, the technology industry is always changing. We have to keep up. We have to be creative and unique. And so we have to be willing to try things that might not work. We just have to keep trying. And so that courage to fail and not necessarily see it as a failure, and just acknowledge that it was brave to try something and find out if it works or not. And if it doesn't, you learn from it. And the next thing you try will be even better because you learned from the last thing. So that made a big difference. And I think through all the twists and turns, a lot of surprises happened in my life, and a lot of things that were really scary and hard to get through. And it all taught me it gave me some discernment for how much tolerance I had for situations that weren't really serving me. I think all along the way, every experience I had taught me something about what was really important to me. And so, like I said, when I came to Palo Alto Software, I came there at a point in my life where I knew that what I wanted most was just a supportive and good work-life balance, and to be able to be there for my son, but also have a successful career. So sometimes it's the company you work for might be more important than the job you enter into the company in, as long as it's a place where they're going to support your growth and your ability to make an impact on the world the way you want to, and to accomplish what you want to accomplish, that's fulfilling for you. So I think that went in a lot of different directions, but it's really hard to sum this all up in 5 minutes. So I think I've filled up my time.
Thanks, Celeste. You brought up so many wonderful points. I think the first thing that really resonated with me is that concept of failing forward, right? I think when we're at school, that's actually, we're not supposed to be failing at all. And so I think it could be really scary when we enter the working world, where actually sometimes you're going to try new things and things are going to fail, but that's a learning experience. And so I think the fact that you have that creative background that really gave you the resilience to really know how to deal with those situations, I think that's a really important lesson, as well as the lesson of sometimes it's just as important to know what you don't want or what you don't like as the things that you do want and you do like. And I definitely agree with you. One of the things that never would have occurred to me when I was getting ready to graduate from school was how important it is the culture of the place that I'm going to be working, not just what I'm going to be doing, but who I'm going to be doing it with. So I think those are all really wonderful lessons that you've shared with us. So thank you. And I think it's a really great transition to our next alumna, Sally Bergeson, who's the founder and CEO of Oiselle, which is a women's athletic clothing company. So Sally, this is a perfect transition to what we were talking about when we last spoke, this concept that students sometimes think when they're graduating, they have to know exactly what it is that they want to do when they go out into the real world, or they have to know what their dream job is. But, we talked about how that's really a myth. That's not true. So can you talk a little bit about, and maybe bust that myth a little bit for us based on your own experiences?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, first off, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for bringing this group of people together. And hello to those who have joined. Oh my gosh, I think I'm just imagining all of you, and I think that you're probably all like light years ahead of where I was at your age, because I pretty much embodied just the ultimate not knowing of what I wanted to do. So I was an English major at Oregon, and I mean, English majors are like the butts of all kinds of jokes, because it's kind of like, what are you gonna, what kind of job are you gonna get? So I had no clue. And I mean, I spent way too much time going to parties in college, and Taylor's is no longer a thing, I guess I hear, but I really should have probably accessed the services that this group represents. But, I think for me, it's funny because now I run a company that is the combination of my two life's great passions, which is running and design. But I actually didn't found that company until I was 38 years old. So just kind of back to the theme that everybody has talked about in terms of twists and turns and different things. Basically, right after college, I thought I might want to be a lawyer because my dad's a lawyer. So I was a paralegal for 6 years. And then I left there and I went and worked for a design agency. And really that was the first job that I had where I could tell it was something that I loved. And kind of my radar went off in terms of like just feeling it kind of in my heart. And so I worked at the design agency for about 6 years, and then I went out on my own and I had my own consulting practice. During that whole time though, I ran as a like a activity and a part of my health program. And it was so foundational that ultimately Oiselle was bringing together my love of design and my love of running into a new company. So but I often just mention that though, that didn't happen until I was 38. So I'm very much in favor of experimentation. You don't know till you'll try. It's okay not to know right now. In fact, I think people that kind of are so sure at this age, it's almost like a little red flag for me. It's like, you might get to 35 and wish that you had like, dabbled in a few other things. So anyway, that's a bit of my story in a nutshell, but thank you again. And so excited to be here today.
Thanks, Sally. Yeah, I hear you about not knowing when you're graduating about where you might want to end up, and the fact that your interests and your values may change as you progress through your career. So you won't know until you experiment and try different things. So I think that's a really great lesson for our students and our alumni to hear. So that brings us to our last alumni panelist, Kevin Yamaka, who's the founder of Soko Coffee here in Eugene. So Kevin, this past year, I think everyone on this call can identify with the experience of hitting some bumps in the road and dealing with adversity and unexpected challenges. So can you talk a little bit about how you've dealt with moments when you've hit a bump in the road along your winding career path, and how have you used those experiences to help propel you forward to the next step in your journey?
Absolutely. Well, thank you first for having me here. I'm excited to be a part of this event. But yeah, I think, going all the way back to when I was starting at the U of O, and just kind of going through the process of trying to figure out, what direction I felt like I was heading in with my educational career and into professional career. And it was really that challenge initially of with growing up in school. You always feel like there's just this linear progression where you're building off of what you learned the previous year, and then the next year you're just going to be kind of taking that next incremental step up. And so that format kind of primed me to think that life, going into college and then professionally, was just going to kind of continue that linear progression. But quickly after I started school at the U of O, realized that that's not really how things happen. And going into school, I initially thought I was going to be a business major, so I started taking classes there, but then also was taking classes through my FIG, my freshman interest group, in anthropology, actually, and was surprised to be kind of interested in those classes, and was also taking econ classes and thought, well, maybe that's another path. And so trying to figure out which direction to go in such a short, you only have a few years to really figure out what you're going to do. And then on top of that, I was also working for the football team while I was in school. And so that was another path that actually was a very real possibility of going into coaching after school. And so I was trying to just deal with all of these career path ideas. I was finally able to package it all into a general social sciences major that focused on business, economics, and society. Just kind of happened to have a focus that I was able to wrap all of my interests into. So got really lucky there. But that was a big lesson for me to learn, that you could have some kind of idea about what direction you think things are going to go in, but also to be open-minded to new ideas, new possibilities that come up. So once I graduated from the U of O, I kind of approached it with a kind of a trial and error mentality. So just kind of started with the career path that had kind of was the most time sensitive, which was the football and coaching. And so tried that out at the high school level and kind of quickly realized that wasn't for me. And then went into the kind of business direction with finance and accounting, and jumped around to different cities and different industries to see if that was the direction that I wanted to go in. and over time just kind of figured out that that wasn't really the direction that I wanted to be moving in, and actually going back to that first job that I had as a football coach. I was working in a coffee shop just kind of on the side to pay the bills, and at that point it was just a job, but it actually sparked some interest and kind of planted a seed in my mind that maybe this is something that I could try to create a career out of. So that was probably like 10 years ago. And so it was always kind of in the back of my mind. And so I was most recently in a position, in a finance position, when the pandemic hit, and lost my job at that point. And that, we're talking about setbacks. I mean, that was a pretty big moment to try to deal with. And then on top of that, we had our first child about 10 days after getting laid off. And so there was a lot going on in my life at that point. But luckily had kind of set plans in place to start moving in the direction of starting this coffee company actually before I lost my job. And so once that did happen, although it was a setback, it was also kind of an opportunity to make that jump into this job that I thought was going to be just something that I would maybe potentially just be doing as kind of a side hustle, job, but actually was able to turn that into my main focus and just kind of run with it. And so I would say the biggest thing is to really, when you're looking at your career path and setbacks and different things that may come up, the best thing to really do is to have that mindset that things are going to happen. There will be things that pop up, whether it's recessions or pandemics or whatever it is that will maybe throw you off course, and just to expect that something like that is going to happen. And then it's also beneficial to kind of have some plans. It doesn't necessarily need to be as specific as the plans that we had to build this coffee company, but something in place so that when something does pop up and let's say the job just doesn't work out, that you have something that you can kind of fall back on, rather than just kind of starting from scratch all over again. So that's kind of my biggest piece of advice at this point.
Thanks, Kevin. That's super helpful to hear about. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, so I want to make sure that we get off to our breakout rooms. But Eric had asked that I also just sort of share a few things about some resources at the Career Center that could be useful. First, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists again. I think some of the threads that I heard come out from these stories were the importance of curiosity and a growth mindset and resilience, being open to new ideas, and not necessarily, knowing where things may take you. But if you are open and curious and put yourself out there, then sometimes those setbacks or, the things you didn't like will turn into things that are new opportunities or things that you do like. That's certainly been true for me. My career before I came to Career Center was as an art museum curator for over a decade. So I was just like some of our panelists talked about, experienced a layoff and had to reinvent my career. And so I did that really by networking and putting myself out there, talking to other people to hear about their career stories, just like you all are doing here today. So I think the first thing I would say is that the Career Center is a great resource if you want to learn about potential career paths and career opportunities, whether it's checking our jobs board, which is called Handshake. Take a look and just start reading job descriptions questions and see what sounds interesting to you. Keep coming to networking activities or events. The Alumni Association puts on many of these throughout the year, and we do as well at the Career Center. And you'll see all of those listed in Handshake in our event section. If you want to have an opportunity to talk with one of our career readiness coaches, you can make an appointment on our website, which is career.uoregon.edu, and you can have a one-on-one coaching appointment. It doesn't just have to be for, can you look at my resume or can you help me prepare for an interview? But our coaches often have conversations with students about the bigger questions, like what am I going to do with my life? How do I take the things that I care about and the things that I'm good at and translate that into potential career path? So I'd encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities and come see us at the Career Center. There are a lot of other resources you can see at our website, but I'm going to leave it at that for now so that we can head out to the breakout rooms, and then we'll come back for a Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric to transition us to the breakout rooms.
Joanna, that is so great. Thank you very much for doing that. And just like you, I picked up on a lot of those same themes in a lot of our alumni stories. Is even though there was no one single common job or everybody experienced setbacks, it really was about the theme of curiosity and what's the next thing and personalizing it for you. So that will take us to our breakout rooms. We are going to allow our attendees now to hopefully personalize the lessons that you've learned from hearing from our alumni, and really, think about what it means to you. So a lot of the times we get so wrapped up in the big question about what am I going to do with my life, that it's so overwhelming and it's really hard to even begin. So we're going to reframe that question into the question, what can I do with my time that is important? It's a little bit more approachable. And we have 6 questions that our staff and our alumni panelists are going to lead you through to help you get to that, what can I do with my time that is important answer. So I'm going to break you out into breakout rooms. We'll have about 12 minutes for discussion. And in each of the rooms, there will be one staff member and one alumni panelist who will be there to help facilitate discussion. If anybody has any issues, I will stay in the main room, so feel free to come back. I can always answer your questions and then throw you back in a breakout room. And one last thing to do as a breakout room group is when you come back, just decide on one question that you want to have as a group for our panel, because when we come back, we'll do a little Q&A between our attendees and the alumni panel. So your 12 minutes will start now. I'm going to open breakout rooms and send everybody there. And like I said, if you have any questions, I'm in the main room. Feel free to hop back in and I'm happy to help. All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had some really good conversations in those breakout rooms. Those are some pretty heavy questions, some of them. If you're going to die a year from today, or how are you going to save the world? So I hope that those conversations were able to take the next step of learning a little bit from our alumni career stories, and then internalizing and personalizing those lessons as to how you can put them into action yourself. So now we're going to kind of finish up with just a Q&A for our panel. We do have, if you had any questions that your group came up with, I'd like to first open the floor to anybody from the breakout rooms that wants to ask a question. And then we'll just go ahead and open it up for open discussion. So in the meantime, if you have questions, feel free to paste them in the chat, unmute yourself and just ask the panel. There should be a free-flowing discussion. So I'll open the floor now for breakout room questions.
Eric, I can pose one from group 5. We were having a really great conversation about flow state. What are the things that give you energy where you just don't realize that 2 hours have passed? So I think it would be really helpful to hear from the other panelists, what are those moments that when you've experienced that flow state, what are those things that give you energy, and how have you used that knowledge to help you in your career, or where do you find it in your career?
Joanna, I can tackle that one. I found that whenever I'm trying to write out a new idea, a new perspective, a new kind of thought, just a pen and a paper, the old fashioned way, right? And I'll just start writing things down. And after I look up at the clock, it's been half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour has gone by. And trying to communicate a new idea in a new way is always very exciting for me, because I think I've stumbled onto this great, this great nugget of wisdom, when in fact it's something probably very mundane. But looking at things from a new perspective is always very illuminating to me. And when I try and write out my thoughts and try to coherently do so that other people can understand it very simply, then I find time flies by.
Oh man, flow state. I just wanted to comment that I think this came up in our little breakout room, but the world is just really heavy right now. I just wanted to like acknowledge that. And I know, you know, I have the benefit of being older, having more hindsight. And I don't know if you're older, your parents or other older friends that you might have like acknowledged that just we're in a very different kind of difficult time. And I have kids around your ages, and they ask me, maybe now is just the beginning of the always of difficult times, which I think is a fair question. But I think there's just a lot of heaviness that personally is preventing me from finding my flow state, and has interrupted that quite a bit. And I know in some ways it's okay, because it means I'm doing the hard work that needs to be done right now in the various areas, whether that's anti-racism or environmental justice or other causes that we find very important to either ourselves individually or as the collective. But it's big. It's really big. And so I think also just acknowledging that if you don't not finding the flow state right now, it's okay. Give yourself a lot of grace. You're not alone. We're in this together, and it's just one step at a time. So
Thank you, Sally. You and Rafe and Grant were in room 1. Did you guys have any questions that you had come up for the panel that you thought were really interesting?
go ahead, Rafe.
I think Grant wanted to know why he was so lucky to get our so much attention in one breakout room. But no, I don't think we had any questions for the panelists. We had an amazing discussion though.
What about, I'll open it up for breakout rooms 2, 3, or 4. We haven't heard from you guys yet.
I'm not sure what number breakout room I was in. However, I know my breakout room did have a question, and it kind of goes off the topic we were just talking about, which is, since we are on this virtual platform, how are we able to best connect and network with people and leave like a lasting impression on those that we're talking to?
Can I jump in there? Because part of my job is recruiting people. And before the pandemic, I did a lot of, in company tours and like career days and things, like with U of O and other places. And so since everything went virtual, it's been a lot trickier to connect with a lot of people. And when you're trying to recruit employees, you want to try to reach as many people as possible. One thing that I have leaned on a ton, and this might help you, those of you looking for jobs, especially jobs that recruiters might be hiring for, is use LinkedIn and make sure that your profile has lots of keywords in it, and that you're just active in there. Post some things once in a while when you see articles that are interesting to you, or write posts about your ideas about the work, the industry that you're in, or just post and stumble across it, searching for like I said, key type of degree, at least in my experience, I'm searching less for the type of degree and more for like the type of skills and the things that are important to you. I love looking at people's profiles. I hope that they write things in there about that explain to me what is really important to them beyond where they've worked and what type of education they have. What type of career do they really want? What's important to them? What kind of company do they want to work for? So just I just wanted to take that opportunity because especially in this remote virtual world, leaning on those platforms that you have online are great, and social. It's great. Sure, there's problems with social media, but boy, have we had to lean on that to connect with people. So find creative ways to have a presence online. And it's great that you came to an event like this. Find more things like that.
I think if I could piggyback off that just briefly, I think that's a really good point to utilize LinkedIn, and even though it is social media and where it's all digital, you can still add your kind of own flair of originality and creativity, and sharing an article with your own perspective on what the article says, or your own take on things is a great way too. Also being in sales and kind of recruiting, video conferences, video messages is huge as well. I mean, we're all sitting through a screen, and every single time you can have a connection with somebody that's as face-to-face as possible, at least for me personally, that's been extremely useful and beneficial as well. So.
And if I can amplify both of those comments, I've found in the last year when I'm doing a webinar like this as a panelist, as an attendee, one thing that's always been very helpful is to go through, if you can see the list of participants, write their names down, and then go on LinkedIn and connect to all of them with a message saying, hey, we were both on the UO Alumni Association or career webinar. Would love to stay in touch. I appreciate your comment on whatever it was that you found interesting. Just start that conversation. The second thing, to amplify a comment that Celeste made in terms of recruiting and hiring, I don't know how it is for other sectors, but in the business community, if you send someone a resume, the first thing they're going to do if they think you have the qualifications for the job is look you up on LinkedIn. And if you're not there, you're putting an enormous obstacle in your way to getting the job that you're applying for. So be active on LinkedIn. It takes you a few minutes to set up a basic profile, comment on people's pages, start building a community. And when I say build a community, you're essentially growing your network with people you haven't met. And just in the last year, I've been much more involved in LinkedIn because of, we can't network in person, right? And I've had business opportunities come from that. So be visible, participate, build your network. And I'm happy to connect with anyone on this webinar too. So feel free and find me on there. I think I'm the only Cameron Javdani on there. If you find another one, let me know, please. But I'm happy to connect with anybody.
That's a great point, Cameron. And just the fact of networking, I know me personally, when I was in undergrad, I discounted how important networking would be to my career growth long term. And LinkedIn is a great tool for that. We have a UO group on LinkedIn that people can join that I think Joanna put the link down there in chat. But also just even being willing to pick up the phone, email somebody, write them a handwritten note. A lot of the industries that you guys are going to be joining, folks are very willing to help recent grads and current students as they start to set out on their journey. So picking up that phone and saying, hey, I'm a University of Oregon graduate, you're an alumni, can we have a 15 to 30 minute informational interview just so I can learn more about you? Even something as simple as that can really help in terms of your info gathering. So I want to wrap up with one question for all of the panel that connects back to the themes of the Midnight Library. If you could go back and redo anything, if you have regrets, would you actually redo it, or was it kind of better to learn from your mistakes? So we'll start. Celeste is the first one I see on my screen. Celeste, we'll start with you.
It just took me a second to get to my unmute button. Thanks. I'll start by saying I have no regrets. And that doesn't mean that if I could go back and do things again with what I know now, I probably would have done things differently. But I don't beat myself up about that. I didn't know what I know now. And so I followed my instincts. I did what I knew how to do best. As I said before, I learned from the failures. I learned from getting into situations that I found out that's not what I want anymore, and moved on. And all those things helped me get to where I am now, and I'm really happy with where I am now. And it's really worked out for the best. And even though there were times where it was you may feel lost. Actually, sometimes you may feel like, oh, how in the world am I going to get where I want to be? But again, I'm really glad we were just talking about networks, because you can't do it alone. So just nurture the relationships in your life, because having those people in your life will be more valuable than any of us know at any given moment. Someday they're gonna really help you through. So yeah, getting through things together is so important, and for that reason, I don't regret anything that happened.
Great answer. Thanks, Celeste. Cameron, what about you?
So I'll give you a different answer than Celeste, but for the exact same reasoning. I would absolutely do things differently. I would absolutely change some of the decisions I made. But like she said, like Celeste said, it's with the benefit of hindsight now. And at the time I was making these choices, I thought, I have a good likelihood of succeeding. And let's say the economy didn't crash in 2008, I still might be running halftime promos at Autzen, right? Who knows where that would have taken me. So with the benefit of hindsight, yes, I would have changed some of those decisions, but you can't look over your shoulder all the time at your past. You learn from those things that didn't go the way you wanted to, and you make better decisions now. There's an old saying where, if you're 20, you look at what you were doing at 15 and thought, oh, I was an idiot then, and I know so much more now. And then when you're 25, you look back when you were 20 and say, oh, I didn't know anything at 20, but now 25 and I know everything. I'm 38. I still do that every year. So that process doesn't stop, and it shouldn't stop. So give yourself the grace that you're going to make some mistakes as you go. That's okay. Just don't make it twice, and learn from it and move on and make better decisions as you were going forward.
Great advice there, Cameron. Sally, what's your take on regrets and redoing?
I'm also a no regrets person, because it's just so futile. I mean, and you have to learn as you go, and nobody can give you the answer before you've hurt yourself trying to figure it out yourself and learn that lesson. I don't have many regrets, but I don't know. Sometimes I look back through the history of time, I wish I had known more about what Britney Spears was going through. Honestly, sometimes I look through this lens of my own feminism, and I'm like, wow, well, I was there in the 90s. I remember those news stories and the way things were framed. And I kind of wish I had been more with it at the time, to be able to kind of understand kind of how my own view was being shaped in some very warped ways. And I mean, that's just kind of, I think, what you learn as you get older. And, we all learn it with a little bit more perspective and yeah, I regret that my feminism wasn't stronger at that time to understand what was happening. And I think, just speaking to that too, as a woman, being young in your professional career, I think sometimes you have a lot of doubts, kind of you question yourself maybe more than you should. And so if there's anything you can do to kind of advance that a little bit, and remember that that's normal, and more than you think you do, you matter, you should have a voice at the table, any table. So anything you can do around that, I wish I had done sooner. And now that I have a voice at a table that I made, I love that part of it.
That's awesome advice, Sally. Yeah, imposter syndrome is a very real thing, but I think everybody here, if you graduated from the U of O, you are capable and you have a network behind you that can really support you. Kevin, can you wrap things up for us? If you could go back and redo anything, what's your take on that?
Sure. It's such a hard question. I feel like professionally, if I look back at the positions that I've taken and the path that I've been on, I don't regret anything, because from each of the positions that I've had, I've learned from and have grown from. I think if there's anything that I regret, it's the things that I didn't do. I wish I would have, done more to, I don't know, study harder in school and yeah, go to the library instead of Taylor's more. But no, I think the things that I have done, I don't regret. It's more the things that you could always try harder in school or read more books, try to make more connections to your network. So those are the things that I probably would change if I could, but it's also just, how much energy do you want to put into looking back at your past and worrying about it, or is it better to take that energy and just to move forward and take the next step? That's the biggest thing for me.
Great. And Joanna, would you like to put a bow on this in terms of, as our students and our alumni look forward, how can the Career Center help them out, and what do we have to offer for our students and alumni as they're looking to start their journey?
Sure. So, in addition to all resources that I talked about before, and I know there have been lots of links shared in the text chat below, I would say that one of the things that the Career Center, especially our career readiness coaches, can help you with that you might not think about is having an opportunity to have those discussions about what are my values, and what are my passions. And I think that's sort of the thread that I've heard through all of those, do I regret or not regret? But sometimes we just don't know where our path is going to take us, and our values may change, but it's important to always know what your values are. So if you want some help in having that kind of conversation and thinking about those questions, we've started that conversation here today. The Career Center can definitely help you to continue that conversation. So we hope that we will see you virtually or hopefully in person very soon.
Well, I want to take a minute to, first of all, thank very much all of our alumni panelists for sharing their stories, their experiences. I want to thank all of our attendees for joining, providing such great energy to our breakout rooms and to our Q&A session. And then thank you very much to our staff, Sarah Mason, Megan McKinney, Holly Tate, for working so hard behind the scenes to make this event happen. Tomorrow, we are going to email a follow-up thank you email that will have a survey. It would be great for us if you could fill out that survey and let us know how we did. There will also be instructions on how to connect with our panelists, instructions on how to take the lessons learned and continue your journey out of this event. And as always, the UO Alumni Association and the UO Career Center are here to help you. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us because we're here to help, and Ducks help Ducks. So thank you everybody for taking the time to join us today, and go Ducks.